Welcome to the Dennis Prager Show on this last day of March. And I'm going to go straight to my guest, Sarah Carter. She is an investigative journalist. She's traveled with migrants for the last month. She's fluent in Spanish. Her excellent website is sarahcarter.com. Sarah, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Oh, it's so great to be with you, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And by the way, my daughter, who is at University of Wyoming, is a huge fan of yours, and so is my son. So I just wanted to throw that out there, a nice shout-out from them.
I'm very touched, actually. Thank you for that. I spoke at the University of Wyoming a couple of years ago. Just for the record, you will get a kick out of this. So needless to say, I was attacked in advance for the usual bigotry and phobias, and along the list in either the Laramie paper or the University of Wyoming paper, the writer wrote, and he's an anti-Semite. Yeah.
Oh,
so
it
proves there is a list of terms, and they're just used. There's no basis. There's no backup. There's no proof. Nothing. It's just.
Actually, I laugh, but it is really quite shocking and really quite sad that at a university that they would use that term, correlate that term to you. It shows that they haven't even done the research,
right.
That they know nothing about you,
That's
that
right.
They're just willing to believe whatever lies are being spewed out there, disinformation campaigns out on the Internet. So it really is, even though I laughed a little, it is quite frightening, Dennis. I mean, it's hard to believe that in this day and age when we're supposed to have so much technology that gives us so much access to information, that there's so many people out there with such little information and factual information.
That's right. Well, it's the use of epithets to dismiss, never to debate. Anyway, it was just a memory. I had a great time there. The speech is actually on the Internet, and how socialism makes you selfish, which is probably
right.
more necessary than ever. Okay, so I'm curious about you. Where did you learn your Spanish?
From my mother, from when I was from the moment I was born, probably. I was hearing Spanish. My mother is from Cuba. She's an immigrant. She came in the 1960s on the Johnson Freedom Flight with her sisters and her mother, my grandmother, who I love dearly, and who passed away at the age of 102, believe it or not. So I learned from them. I mean, that was the root of not only my knowledge of Spanish, but also my background and the reason why I'm so passionate about immigrants and about people that are fleeing to find a better life. Now, my mother came in, during a time when Cuba was tumultuous. Fidel Castro had taken power. Obviously, our family were not supporters of Fidel Castro. They left on the Peter Pan and Johnson Freedom Flight to find a better life in America. And my mother always used to say that the moment she landed, they landed first in Florida, but they were sponsored by a family actually in California. One of the churches, a doctor actually in California, sponsored my family. And my mom said when the minute she landed in California, met the family, whenever anybody would ask her, and she worked so hard, she got her, of course, her citizenship and everything, they would say, "Oh, you're Cuban," and she'd say, "No, I'm American. No, I'm American. I left Cuba. I'm an American." And she believed so much in this country. And my father was not Cuban. He was American. He was actually born in Alabama and was a World War II veteran, and a much older father. And he used to, just amazing how much he loved and the passion he had for our country, and the stories I would hear from my father. But I think what really rooted me in the way that I am was both of them. But I grew up in an immigrant neighborhood. I know what it's like after my father passed away. I traveled all over the world when my father was alive. I spent a lot of time in different countries. I really have a grasp for that. I have a real passion for people. And I think that's what has driven me to cover stories along the U.S.-Mexican border, and in Guatemala and in Honduras. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in different parts of the world in my career.
What has, in your view, what has changed at the border from when Donald Trump was president?
Oh, it's so far worse. so far worse. I always tell everyone, I've been covering the border since the Bush administration. There was only one president, and I remember the border even before the Bush administration, believe it or not, but there was only one president that actually meant what he said and did what he said, and that was actually President Trump. And I don't know how people took it. I mean, it's a very difficult subject, right? The issue of immigration, the issue of people fleeing their country or young people undocumented. I mean, we look at the humanitarian issue when it comes to that. But I want people to understand that are listening to this right now. And I'm saying this just because this is what I have experienced and what my knowledge is from all the years I've covered the border. The crisis, the humanitarian crisis, is perpetuated by the fact that we don't have established rule of law that we follow through with. That was going into not only from the Bush administration, but going into the Obama administration. We saw those changes in the Trump administration just in the 4 years. Then he was like, nope, these are the rules. We will not allow you to come in until you are processed. Now, you got to stay over there. We're going to process you through. We're going to find a better way to do this. But we can't just allow and perpetuate this type of behavior where drug cartels, human traffickers, and corrupt politicians and others are basically using human beings in a political game. They're pawns in some kind of political game. And you see the results of that. You see children dying on the road. You see rape and predators targeting innocent migrants who were used in this political game. I'm not just blaming the United States here. They're also pawns in political games in Central America and South America, all over the world. And they get mixed messages. And when I'm down there talking to them, and I say to them, especially on this trip, let's talk about this last month. I don't put words in their mouth. I say, what made you come here? Well, President Biden, because that's what we're hearing everywhere. That we have 100 days to get into the country. President Biden isn't turning anyone back. My family came in last week. They called me. They said they're getting processed. They hear it from word of mouth. They hear it on the internet. They hear it from corrupt politicians or people who maybe want to target the United States. And they'll use Biden's own words. They'll use Vice President Kamala Harris's own words to lure people here. But you got to see the consequences of this, and the consequences of this are lives lost, young children, young girls. Imagine being 7 years old on a journey from Honduras, going through 3 nations, being brought in by people that are not your guardians or your parents. What do you think happens to a young child like that, or a young teenage girl, or a young boy for that matter? These children are targeted. They are destroyed, I think, spiritually inside. Some of them, I've had young girls where, where they've let me know, and I don't want to, talk too much about this, where I've had to go to the Border Patrol and say, could you please get her to a doctor? She has more than likely been raped, and she needs to be checked. She's only 13 years old. So, when people say that, laws, are stopping, all these wonderful people from coming into the country, realize that some of these wonderful people are being trafficked by the most horrific people on the planet. And that's the horror of it, Dennis. And I think that's what, breaks my heart. It's the reason why I keep going back to the border. It's the reason why I've traveled to Guatemala 3 or 4 times. It's the reason why I'm going back. It's the reason why I'm so focused on, our nation's laws and
so
how that affects our national
what is the average individual from Honduras or Guatemala, let's say, what would they answer to you? Gee, I didn't know this happens. It's worth the risk. It's extremely rare. They don't want this to happen to their children. So what would they respond? Well,
it's based on who you're talking to. They don't ever really say it's worth the risk. Like if their child has been harmed, I think, and they're a decent human being, they would say that they can't believe that this actually happened, that they actually thought that they would make it in safely. But I got to tell you right now, Dennis,
All right, wait.
Now
Tell me right. Don't forget what you want to tell me right now, Dennis. That's because I'm very interested in hearing the response to that. Sarah Carter is at sarahcarter.com, and she is sort of embedded with people coming in the southern border. I'm Dennis Prager.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. The Congressional Budget Office just released its new debt figures. The national debt this year will top 102% of GDP. This has only happened twice before, both during World War II. This number does not count the proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, nor does it count the money which was borrowed from Social Security, since that's considered intergovernmental debt. Debt levels this high break the intergenerational covenant that we have with our children and grandchildren. FDR borrowed to defeat the Nazis and Imperial Japan. Money well spent. Reagan borrowed to defeat the Soviet Union. That was also money well spent. These great projects made the world better for future generations. But our political class is not buying victories against international threats. They are buying political victories for incumbents. This is nothing more than fiscal abuse, and our kids will pay the price. It needs to stop, now. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
FF, BBC, salvageable.
Right. The problem is that whenever I'm confronted with this question, I immediately hark back to my childhood, the great comedies of the BBC, the wonderful documentaries it produces, David Attenborough, etc.
It's like ancient history. The two Ronnies. It's like ancient history.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have such affection for the quality of content that they used to produce.
Right.
The problem is now I think they've gone too far down a particular route, and not even with the content they produce, but with the people that they hire. They tend to be, university educated. They tend to be very liberal, very metropolitan, very pro-Remain, etc., etc. So, and the problem is when you get a certain type of person, you create essentially a large echo chamber.
Yeah.
And at that point, they can't see somebody else's point of view. They can't understand why people think differently, and they're only going to produce a certain type of content. And at that moment, the content that they're producing is out of step with the vast majority of people, or the silent majority, as they're often known in this country.
The remarkable thing about everything we discussed is the similarities between the situation here in America and in the UK, the land of the indomitable bulldog spirit and the likes of Winston Churchill. I think it's not an accident that those two individuals who don't see themselves as conservatives, I'm talking about Francis Foster and Konstantin Kisin. Well, Francis's mother escaped from Venezuela, and Konstantin and his family escaped from the Soviet Union.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Mina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the vice president of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this, I deleted a previous tweet.
Hi. And it's the last day of fundraising. It's the 31st of March. So the word is out. People are abandoning their overpriced wireless carriers and flocking to Pure Talk for the same coverage, but at a fraction of the price if you're with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Switching to Pure Talk could save your family over $800 a year, and switching is extremely easy. You can keep your phone, keep your number, or get huge discounts on the latest iPhones and Androids. I got a new iPhone because I already have an Android. I wanted to use one and sign up for the Pure Talk system. I was dubious at this rate of $30 a month for unlimited talk and unlimited text and 6 gigabytes of data. It's the same thing as what I have now. How do you get it? From your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say Dennis Prager, pound 250, and save about $800 a year. Pound 250, save Dennis, say Dennis Prager. Sarah Carter is my guest. She is with Fox News and her own magnificent website, sarahcarter.com. And spends a lot of time at the southern border. So I asked you, given the terrible things that can happen to especially a child, what is the attitude of a person in Honduras or Guatemala? I'll take my risk. I don't even know there's a risk. What is their view?
Look, I think they realize there's a risk. There's a reason why we see, and I'm going to be frank here, Plan B, different types of birth control on the trips. I talk to people here. I'm here meaning like in Virginia, immigrants who have come in, illegal immigrants who have come in, and legal immigrants who have friends in their neighborhood who have traveled in from Honduras and other parts of the world, and they're just willing to take those risks. Sometimes life is just really tough, even in those countries. I don't take that away. But then I talk to people here, and they say, well, MS-13 moved into my neighborhood. I talk to people who are legal immigrants in some of these underprivileged neighborhoods, and they'll just be like, I remember under the Trump administration, one person in particular who I know very well, said, oh, we're just so grateful because no new MS-13 gang members have arrived in our community in a while, and we want it to stay that way. Like, they were terrified because what will happen, too, is there's good and there's bad, Dennis. I mean, you just can't say, everybody's an innocent victim. No, not everybody is an innocent victim. There are a lot of innocent victims and innocent people who are thinking that maybe they can do this, they can find a better life, but there are also a lot of bad people. And there's also a lot of people who have abandoned their children. Their children are raised on the streets in Honduras by gang members, or maybe their children lost, maybe their parents passed away, maybe these children grew up alone, or maybe they grow up with guardians that aren't very good, and they become a part of a gang on the street, and now they're coming to the United States. There's a lot of layers to this story that are not being told. And so some people, yes, some people believe that, well, maybe we can do it. Maybe we can take this risk. Maybe we can make it safely across the border. There's our family units. There's a lot of people that travel with their children. There's also people that travel with children that are not their children. And they pretend that those children are their children. In fact, in one instance, several weeks ago, while we were walking with a group, one of the kids, I was with a private landowner, he also speaks Spanish, and he asked this little boy, he said, wait, hold on, because the little boy was going up ahead, your father's behind you. You know, and I wait for your father, and he said, that's not my father. And the man said, no, I'm your father, remember, I'm your father. It's like they think they're going to have a better chance of staying if they tag on to one of the children, say they're their child, they won't get returned back home. And that seems to be the process right now again. This happened under the Obama administration. We saw this in 2013 to 2014. There were about 67,000. I also covered the stories then, 67,000 undocumented children. But remember, there's a lot of what they call family units, and that's taking up the bulk of it. And for a lot of people, they think like, oh, if we come in with a child, then we're home free. We're not going to get returned.
And they're right, I assume.
They are right. They are right. To a large part,
is there a difference between the way we see pictures of largely children detained now and under the Trump administration when they were supposedly held in cages?
Well, I think there's a huge difference. We didn't. First of all, it wasn't as many as we're seeing right now. Look, last month we had over 100,000 people come in illegally across the U.S. southern border. We have the area, the facility where I was at, I was reporting on, I had a whistleblower at the Donna facility, which was fascinating to me that I couldn't even believe it when I got down there to see it, these long football field-like white tents with no windows. You know, air conditioning, yes, but absolutely no windows. I couldn't see in. It looked like a prison. The fencing around the Donna facility was double layered. It was very difficult to see inside. You couldn't even see the people that were being brought in and being dropped off. And this is where the majority of children were being held at this Donna facility. The complaints that it was over 800% capacity. In one particular tent area, there should have only been 80 children. There were over 700 children.
How would this have been reported if this had happened exactly like this, but President Trump were president?
They would have destroyed him. The media would have destroyed him. AOC would have been down there crying. She would have had Rashida Tlaib with her and the whole gang, and Ilhan Omar. They would have had, this would have been it. They would have had another impeachment. They would have called him a racist. They would have said every word that could come to their mouth would have described President Donald Trump. They would have torn him apart. And the tragedy here is that there is a real crisis at the border, a very vivid, real crisis. We can see it happening. I'm reporting on it every single night that I'm down there. And other reporters are going down there now, too, and reporting. And the Biden administration refuses to call it a crisis, refuses to call a spade. They put Vice President Kamala Harris in charge of, the immigration policy issues. She won't even go down there. In fact, she laughed. And she had a weird nervous laugh, a cackle of sorts, when she was asked if she was going to go down to the border. And she should be nervous. But she should have said, no, we're going down there and we're going to see what's happening and we're going to find a resolution to this crisis. Because it's not just about the people and the children. Children are always number one, right? They're innocent victims, most of them, especially if you're talking about very young children. These are the innocent victims of our just messed up world, right? But what about our law enforcement officials? What about our, DPS, Texas Department of Public Safety? What about Arizona law enforcement and federal officials that are on the front lines every day? What about the people that are coming in with COVID?
Yep. Well, you can learn more watching her on Fox News or at sarahcarter.com. You're doing very important work, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I'm really glad you bring up the issue of values and patriotism, Seb, because I think this is so important for people in the West to understand. And as someone who comes from outside, it's easier to see. I'm working on my first book, which will be called An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West.
Wow.
And this is really the point that I want to hit home. People need to understand in the West that what we have here is precious. It's rare. It's extremely difficult to maintain. And if we do not remember what our values are, and we don't speak up for them, if we don't protect them, if we're not patriotic in a healthy way, the West will die, like every great civilization before. And what comes in place of that is going to be China or Russia. Now, as someone who comes from Russia, I can tell you that's not a pleasant outcome. I know a lot of Chinese people. I promise you, if you care about, as people on the left claim to care about racism and, inequality and oppression, well, a world dominated by China, I'm not sure that's going to be less racist. I'm sorry, right? So we need to remember.
But the donuts aren't that good. The light cheese are better.
Yeah.
Bat donuts are probably not the best. But look, I think people in the West really need to understand that this is a civilizational issue. All this woke stuff, it's not just games. And I said this at the time when I turned down that contract in 2018. People were like, "Why do you care so much about these students sending you this contract?" And I was saying to them, 5-10 years from now, these are the idiots that are going to be running our country.
And they are. And they are.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
My theory is that the reason the left is pivoting and desperately trying to focus on gun control is that'll be the shiny object that takes all the attention away from the crisis we have along the border. There's no way Democrats can possibly explain this surge by illegals. And yes, I know the mainstream media wants to call them migrants, but they are, after all, illegals. There's no way to explain this other than the Biden administration's invitation to come in. I saw clips last night of candidate Joe Biden saying, "We want a couple million people. We want people here. We're America." And now, of course, there's a real catastrophe unfolding. And ground zero seems to be Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You know what I'm really worried about is white males in this country. Those are the people committing the most.
Me. So you're worried about me?
Yes.
If I said I'm worried about black males, that would be a racist thing, right? You just said white males. That's pretty racist.
They have to shoot it.
Love, not hate, makes America great.
Look at some of the Nazi propaganda about the Jews, and you see a lot of stuff that's really similar to what people are saying about the Jews.
I wouldn't equate what's going on today with the rise of the Third Reich. Would you?
What did you just say? You don't think it is part of the Third Reich?
No, I.
All right, everybody, I want you to know SarahCarter.com is Sarah A. Carter. There's two A's. SarahACarter.com. I think that's obviously very important that you know that. Wow. CNN has issued a statement that gender identity is not knowable at birth. And you continue to watch that that network or someone you know, and they call Fox liars. Well, it is what it is, and we have to fight it, and that's what I do every day. It's a sick world of the left. It's sick. It's pathologic. It's pathologic. One of the things that PragerU is doing is Prager Force 15,000 young people around the world. And on this final day of fundraising, I am interviewing a high school student who's in Prager Force in Brentwood, Tennessee, Matthew Mason. Matthew, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Mr. Prager. It's great to be on your show.
Thank you. Tell me a little about yourself. Are you in a high school? Were you homeschooled? Which?
Well, I am of high school age, but I am currently being homeschooled.
At what age did you begin?
Kindergarten. I've always been homeschooled.
Oh, you've always been homeschooled. By the way, one of the reasons I immediately asked was you said Mr. Prager. That is you. That is very often a giveaway. that somebody has actually. I don't have a problem with Dennis, but I do admire the way you were raised in that regard. Are you intending to go to a college?
Yeah, I think I will go to college.
And are you aware, having been homeschooled, what colleges typically teach, or shall I say indoctrinate?
Yeah, I think I have, because I've, seen a lot of campus lectures, and I stay pretty informed. But I am planning on probably going to one of the more conservative colleges that's also Christian. I'm not planning on going to, UC Berkeley or anything.
Right. Okay. So in that sense, you're one of the few, actually, colleges. Not even all Christian colleges have been untainted by you don't know the gender of a child when it's born. Are you familiar with that argument that there is no such thing as fixed gender?
Yeah, I am. It's kind of like the idea that, like, your mind is all that matters and your physical body doesn't matter. I mean, I don't find it very convincing, but I think that's the basis of it.
So how, being homeschooled, have you become aware of what's going on out there?
Well, I mean, I think how I'm more aware is that I listen to, a lot of lectures. I listen to you. I listen to, Charlie Kirk. I listen to Ben Shapiro, and, they talk about it a lot. So I think that's probably the main source of information I'm, where I'm getting.
How did you discover PragerU?
Well, I was actually listening to a lecture by Charlie Kirk, and he mentioned PragerU during the lecture. So I checked it out. I loved your guys' videos, and I wanted to get involved, so I joined Prager Force.
Have you been at any meeting to meet other Prager Force members?
Well, I've been on virtual events. I joined this past summer in June, and obviously there's been a lot of lockdowns already, so I don't think there's been a lot of in-person events yet.
There have been Zoom meetings?
Yes, I've done some Zoom meetings.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, do you have a way to, through social media, mouth to mouth, Zoom to Zoom, way of spreading word about our videos?
Yeah, I have a Twitter account. That's my main form of spreading, and I like to retweet your guys' videos and comment on things and such.
And I always ask this, and I'll just preface it by noting I always, in years, it's amazing to me, I've always gotten a different answer. Do you have a favorite PragerU video?
Yes, I do.
Drum roll, please. Go ahead.
Okay, and it's one of the videos that you did. It's I believe it's actually your most recent one. It's How the Left Sees the World, Power, Race, and Class.
That's right. That has not been chosen yet.
Yeah.
Power, Race, and Class. That's exact. Yes. All right. Hold on with me. Just a couple of more questions. This young man will be spreading the word. PragerU.com, 833-PragerU for the donation. And Sean, I want you to know that there is a magnificent product out there called Relief Factor. You hear about it a lot. I totally acknowledge that. There's a reason. Vast numbers of people use it. That's the way it works, and it works. I learned about it because I refused it at first. I never endorsed a painkiller. This is for joint and muscle pain. Then I found out, just as I was about to say no, my wife saw the email and said, "Oh, I'd just like you to know, it's incredibly helpful for my knees." Give it a 3-week tryout. They tell you if it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work. And the tryout is just $19.95 plus shipping. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
studio. Of course, nobody brought up during the press conference that polls show that Americans want voter ID, including black Americans. Yet your party trashes voter ID as voter suppression. Can you please explain how it is that black people want something that you call voter suppression? That didn't come up. Nor did the stunt that Tammy Duckworth and Macy Hirono tried to pull come up. Two Asian American senators, Democrats. A couple days ago, they told Biden that they weren't going to confirm any more new nominees until and unless he appoints an Asian American to a high-level position. Mr. President, what is your reaction to being pressured to put someone in your administration based on skin color, as opposed to performance, as opposed to your comfort level with him or her, as opposed to background? Is this the direction we should be taking America, Mr. President? When you said you wanted a cabinet that looked like America, you're implying that unless the cabinet is racially reflective of the country, then it's an invalid cabinet, invalid administration. Is that what you're telling us? Should we do that with the NBA, Mr. President? Should we do that with doctors? Should we do that with people who design bridges, airline pilots? Should we hire based upon racial diversity and proportionality as opposed to competence? I'm asking.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Regarding the filibuster, at John Lewis's funeral, President Barack Obama said he believed the filibuster was a relic of the Jim Crow era. Do you
Check,
agree?
stop.
Yes.
CNN does fact checks. I don't care if President Obama said that at John Lewis's funeral. I don't care if he says it on the steps of his house. I don't care if he walks out in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and says it's not true. It's false. It's a lie. So when CNN does that, they're using President Obama's lie to cover their own lie, and they're not fact-checking themselves. 4 questions about the filibuster, because the media is left-wing and wants to change the filibuster, which they did not complain about during the years
It's a very
that Chuck
valid
Schumer
point.
used the filibuster to frustrate Donald.
Okay.
Dennis has a hard time saying this, but I, the living monitor, do not. I don't because I know how valuable this is. For a donation of $25,000, you can have a 1 hour's Zoom session with us. Invite as many family members and friends as you want. Or, when this craziness ends, you can have a lunch or cigar with Dennis in person. Call 833-PRAGER-U, 833-772-4378, or go to PragerU.com.
Hey, by the way, I want to tell you about a movie. It's the last thing you'd expect, a hilarious movie coming from the evangelical world. Evangelical world, of which I am a big fan, is not known for its knee-slapping humor. But the executive producer, Mike Lindell, has made this film, a bunch of great actors. It's a hilarious new faith-based comedy, Church People. Guy Sides, America's youth pastor, realizes he's stuck in the megachurch marketing machine and he wants to find his passion again. But when he tries to get to the heart of the ministry, he's in the throes of dissuading his misguided church leadership from performing a strange and potentially blasphemous stunt. And it's gospel affirming and it's funny. Church People, you can stream it at salemnow.com. Church People at salemnow.com. I have a high school student in Tennessee, member of Prager Force. One final thing, if I may, speaking to Matthew Mason. By the way, how old are you?
I'm 17.
So, I feel bad asking this, because if you don't feel this, I don't want to put it in your brain, but do you feel that America is in a severe crisis?
Somewhat. I mean, it'll depend, what happens over the next couple of years. But I really feel that if the Republican Party becomes very secular, then I'm really going to be worried, because then there's not going to be any large enough organization to put forward Judeo-Christian values. So if that happens, I'll get really worried.
So you're aware that at almost every college you get up and introduce yourself and give your preferred pronoun. Are you aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Okay, so to a certain extent, and by the way, I'm actually happy about it, to a certain extent, being homeschooled, you've been insulated from these developments.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. So you have, and I'm happy that you do, a largely optimistic view that we can overcome what's happening. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. Anyway, I wish you luck. I hope we meet one day. And I thank you for joining Prager Force.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. I would like to have a panel of it might also be that he's, in Tennessee and not California or New York. And I suspect it's not Nashville. I don't know where Brentwood, Tennessee is. But it would interest me to find out the average homeschooled student in different areas of the country. Are they aware of the assault on Western civilization that's taking place? The most dramatic one in the last week, and every week has its most dramatic one, or most dramatic 10, is what's happening at Oxford University, where they are declaring musical notation or annotation as a white supremacist movement. The very notion of classical music is an expression of white supremacy. I have said, as you know, thousands of times, written articles on it, everything the left touches, it destroys. At what point will those who find that comment over the top understand that it is literally true? There is nothing the left touches that it doesn't destroy. Nothing. It is a force of pure destruction. If it's good, the left destroys it. America was largely good. America is composed of 330 million flawed human beings. It is amazing that it got as good as it did. The amazing thing is not the bad that exists, which is universal. The amazing thing is the good that exists, which is unique or extremely rare. You don't judge people by the same flaws, or you don't judge a society by the same flaws that every other one has. You judge it by what makes it exceptional, either worse, like a communist or fascist or Nazi country, or better, like America. I have a particular love of classical music, as you know. You know who love classical music the most, by far, certainly in the young generation, are Asians, Koreans, Chinese, and Japanese in particular. If you look at European orchestras, there are so many Asian players. The non-West may save the West. I'll tell you who may save Catholicism, and maybe all of Christianity, are Africans. I've been reading, I don't recall his name, I've been reading the works of an African cardinal, and I forgot which country. He's in West Africa. The man is brilliant, and he so understands the conflict between true Christianity and the left, which the present Pope has no clue with regard to, because he's on the left. So who knows? As I said in my speeches in Romania a couple of years ago, maybe Eastern Europe will save Western Europe. Maybe Africa will save the West. Maybe the South in the United States will save the North. That's right. That's the way it looks at this time, doesn't it? I'm Dennis Prager, and we continue.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The question is, will Joe Manchin, in a 51-50 vote for massive tax hikes on individuals and corporations? What is the answer to that? Because they're not going to break the filibuster here. They're going to just try for 51-50.
Well, I think from my conversations anyway with people who are involved in the discussions around this package, this is going to be in some ways the rebuild West Virginia bill. So, they're not stupid. They know Joe Manchin wants to go back to West Virginia and, be the king, bring rural broadband and so I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but, just picture, Joe Manchin sort of striding into West Virginia and the roads are plated in gold and there's high-speed broadband there and everything's, wonderful. So they're going to give him so much that it's going to be very hard for him to walk away from it. Now, I think there's a conversation, is he going to be comfortable with 28, hiking the corporate tax rate to 28? Probably not. He's indicated that that's probably a bit too high, so maybe the corporate rate settles around 25. But I think the incentives are going to be so high for him as it relates to his own state that I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him to walk away from it.
You see, then they have to go work on Kristen Sinema, who is trying to establish for herself the John McCain legacy in Arizona. And there's an Angus King problem.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It doesn't seem to me, when you read the Federalist Papers and the Constitution, that it's possible that the founders could have foreseen anything along the lines of big tech in America. The power that is in these few companies, clearly our Congress doesn't know what to do about it. They don't have any clue that the free market is not an idol to be worshipped. It's a part of a larger freedom. And so here we are.
I don't think the founders could have envisioned it, but they had correctives for it, which is why we need to, really rise up peacefully and use the First Amendment of the Constitution to fight back. If we weren't in quote unquote lockdown, we could assemble in our town halls, in our churches, in our synagogues and mosques and talk to each other. But lockdown prevents us from using our First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights. And that's intentional.
If this doesn't prove to you, not suggest, not hint at, not imply, prove to you that CNN is sick, that it is morally, intellectually sick, nothing will. CNN. Though the two executive orders signed by Noem, that's Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota, do not explicitly mention transgender athletes, they reference the supposed harms of the participation of quote-unquote males in women's athletics. Supposed harm. There's no real harm that women with male bodies, self-identified females with male bodies, keep winning. Competing in women's sports is supposed harm. We continue. An echo of the transphobic claim cited in other similar legislative initiatives that transgender women are not women. The orders also reference biological sex, a disputed term. Biological sex is a disputed term that refers to the sex as listed on students' original birth certificate. No, it refers to the sex you were born. The chromosomes, the genitalia, the internal organs that are unique to each sex. It's not what you were assigned, it's what nature assigned to you. And now the creme de la creme, the coup de grace. It is not possible to know a person's gender identity at birth, and there is no consensus criteria for assigning sex at birth. It should be there are no consensus criteria, or there is no consensus criterion, but it is CNN. There is no consensus criteria for assigning sex at birth. Yep. Penis, XY chromosomes, testicles. No, that's not a consensus. Ovaries, vagina, same sex, same chromosomes. What is it? Double X, I believe. No criteria. Uterus, no criteria. That's sick. Sick people run. One might even say evil, given the assault on truth that is a daily occurrence at CNN. I don't know how people work there in good conscience. I do. I take it back. The ease with which people dull their conscience is one of the terrible lessons of history. That's how you work at CNN, or the New York Times, or Washington Post. But we're fighting, and we may win, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Mina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the vice president of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this, I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive that the majority of mass shootings in the United States are carried out by white men. She's admitting that just because he was taken alive, she used prejudice and stereotypes to categorize him as a violent white man. But this sort of bigotry and this sort of over-racialization of every single incident is intentional. Barack Hussein Obama, the former president of the United States, came out and said that what happened in Boulder is because of racism and misogyny. I'm paraphrasing. That's the essence of his remarks. Tucker Carlson went after Barack Obama last evening, calling him a racial arsonist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
In fact, I've got a theory. As the Biden administration is now looking at housing migrants at military bases, as the Biden administration is spending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on motel rooms. Brand names, by the way. This isn't just your dude drop in. I'm sure this is the good stuff. ICE has signed a deal worth $89.6 million with a Texas nonprofit to shelter migrants in hotel rooms as the feds process a massive backlog of new arrivals at the border. This deal was announced the other day as illegals are arriving at the border at a rate we haven't seen in decades. ICE has signed a short-term contract with the nonprofit division of Endeavors to provide temporary shelter and processing services for families who have not been expelled and are therefore placed in immigration proceedings for their removal from the United States. The $86.9 million contract provides 1,239 beds and other necessary services. Somebody get out a calculator and do 86.9 million divided by 1,239. Who's got a calculator? Derek, go ahead and do 86.9 million divided by 1,239 beds.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Studio. Of course, nobody brought up during the press conference that polls show that Americans want voter ID, including black Americans. Yet your party trashes voter ID as voter suppression. Can you please explain how it is that black people want something that you call voter suppression? That didn't come up. Nor did the stunt that Tammy Duckworth and Macy Hirono tried to pull come up. Two Asian American senators, Democrats. A couple days ago, they told Biden that they weren't going to confirm any more new nominees until and unless he appoints an Asian American to a high-level position. Mr. President, what is your reaction to being pressured to put someone in your administration based on skin color, as opposed to performance, as opposed to your comfort level with him or her, as opposed to background? Is this the direction we should be taking America, Mr. President? When you said you wanted a cabinet that looked like America, you're implying that unless the cabinet is racially reflective of the country, then it's an invalid cabinet, invalid administration. Is that what you're telling us? Should we do that with the NBA, Mr. President? Should we do that with doctors? Should we do that with people who design bridges? Airline pilots? Should we hire based upon racial diversity and proportionality as opposed to competence? I'm asking.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Regarding the filibuster, at John Lewis's funeral, President Barack Obama said he believed the filibuster was a relic of the Jim Crow era. Do you
Check,
agree?
stop.
Yes.
CNN does fact checks. I don't care if President Obama said that at John Lewis's funeral. I don't care if he says it on the steps of his house. I don't care if he walks out in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and says it's not true. It's false. It's a lie. So when CNN does that, they're using President Obama's lie to cover their own lie, and they're not fact-checking themselves. 4 questions about the filibuster, because the media is left-wing and wants to change the filibuster, which they did not complain about during the years that Chuck Schumer used the filibuster to frustrate Donald Trump for 4 years. Bob in Atlanta, what do you think, Bob?
Well, Hugh, I love listening to you, but I like to give you a hard time, too. So I'm going to cross-examine you. I'd like a yes or no answer. Do you think President Biden is that bright? I don't. I don't think he's that bright at all. What is your answer? Can you do a yes or no for me?
Yes or no? I think sometimes he's very bright.
Know of about men and women. The agenda that I have is very simple. I want men and women to get along better and understand each other better. That's it. That's the only agenda. As I tell you each week, I am not a man fan or a woman fan. There are good men and good women and bad men and bad women. That's the way it works. It's so obvious that it's therefore not something you will study in college because it's particularly true. Last week, the topic engendered a great deal of email and substantiated, from my perspective, what I was talking about. The attacks on cheerleaders that you may not be following, but is in the mainstream media about how they're, what is the word? Not abused. Oh, God, there is a word that is constantly used. Oh, demeaned. They're demeaned. That's it. They're demeaned. Which is pure nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense. You could say anything you want, but demeaned? I'm a cheerleader for the Los Angeles Rams, for the New York Jets, for the Miami Dolphins, and I am demeaned? We should all be so demeaned. I mean, you may object to it, people on religious grounds. That's although I got some very interesting mail from Christians on that one. And anyway, it was a really important topic, which I'll revisit because a number of cheerleaders wrote to me. I think we're going to have a show with one or two of them on because we live in a state of falsehood. Just things that are not true are stated over and over, and they become true. Lies repeated enough become true. All right, anyway, I just wanted to reflect on that. If you missed that show, it's a good reason. This comes spontaneously. I don't have any systematic presentation of appeals for you to subscribe to the show through Pragertopia. But at Pragertopia.com or the Prager store, you could subscribe and get the show commercial-free and hear it any time. Very few people get to hear all 3 hours every day. And frankly, I want every hour to be extremely significant. So if you missed one, it might touch your life. Pragertopia.com. That's where you go. Today's subject is the famous aphorism, happy wife, happy life. So the question is, why isn't there an aphorism for the man? Happy man, happy, or even worse, happy husband, happy. Ooh. Now, it may simply be that nothing rhymes with husband or man that is comparable to life, right? Happy wife, happy life works out perfectly. Happy husband, happy life doesn't quite have the alliterative value that the other one does. But it does raise an interesting question that I would like to raise with you today. The reason happy wife, happy life resonates with people is it's basically true. The home is a happy home. The marriage is a happy marriage if the wife is happy. So the question is it equally true about the husband? If he's not happy, is the happiness of the marriage ruined, and is the happiness of the home ruined? In other words, is the happiness of both spouses equally significant to the happiness of the marriage? That's the question. And the phone number is 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243-7776. Somehow or other, and I'm not offering this as my thought-through thesis, but to the extent that I have thought it through, a moody or unhappy man does not quite have the same, does not necessarily have as devastating an impact on the marriage as an unhappy wife. And yet common sense suggests that it should be equal. Do you agree with me? Wow, that's interesting. The living martyr agrees. Well, he is a living martyr, and his wife seems happy. So, there you go. No, but it's truly interesting. Happy wife, happy life doesn't only work because it rhymes. It works because people sense that there is a truth there that may not be as applicable vis-a-vis the man. Now, I believe a moody person can ruin a marriage a moody person of either sex. Having said that, it does seem to me that the happiness of the wife is more consequential. And this is one time where I admit I can't put my finger on it. Maybe because an unhappy man tends to go into a shell. So he doesn't act out his unhappiness. After all, it's one of the complaints that many women have. You know, he's not in touch with his feelings, or he doesn't express himself. And it may simply be he doesn't want to complain. He doesn't want to lash out, or he's afraid that lashing out will get a bigger lashing in return. I would go so far as to say that if I were to give a government analogy to a marriage, the woman is the Secretary of the Interior, and the husband is the Secretary of State. He deals with foreign matters, but she deals with the interior. I think, in other words, there's more power in her hands to make or break a marriage than in his hands. That's what I think happy wife, happy life implies. I don't think it is merely a function of the fact that the words rhyme. But I keep saying I think because I'm not absolutely certain of this. These are my suspicions. Observing what the male-female hour has taught to me, radio before that, my own life, needless to say, the power of the woman, of the wife, to make or break a marriage emotionally. I'm not talking about infidelity or abuse. I'm not talking about that, all right? Let's assume there's fidelity and let's assume there's no abuse. All right? So that's we're putting those aside. I think that there is more power in the wife's hands to determine the happiness of a marriage. All righty. So let's see. Okay, we're going to take a break and take your calls. 1-8-PRAGER-776. 877-243-7776. If it's true, then clearly not everything is 50-50. All right, this is the Male-Female Hour, and I'm Dennis Prager.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. The Congressional Budget Office just released its new debt figures. The national debt this year will top 102% of GDP. This has only happened twice before, both during World War II. This number does not count the proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, nor does it count the money which was borrowed from Social Security, since that's considered intergovernmental debt. Debt levels this high break the intergenerational covenant that we have with our children and grandchildren. FDR borrowed to defeat the Nazis and Imperial Japan. Money well spent. Reagan borrowed to defeat the Soviet Union. That was also money well spent. These great projects made the world better for future generations. But our political class is not buying victories against international threats. They are buying political victories for incumbents. This is nothing more than fiscal abuse, and our kids will pay the price. It needs to stop now. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
FF, BBC, salvageable.
Right. The problem is that whenever I'm confronted with this question, I immediately hark back to my childhood, the great comedies of the BBC, the wonderful documentaries it produces, David Attenborough, etc.
It's like ancient history. The two Ronnies. It's like ancient history.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have such affection for the quality of content that they used to produce. Right. The problem is now I think they've gone too far down a particular route, and not even with the content they produce, but with the people that they hire. They tend to be, university educated. They tend to be very liberal, very metropolitan, very pro-Remain, etc., etc. So, and the problem is when you get a certain type of person, you create essentially a large echo chamber.
Yeah.
And at that point, they can't see somebody else's point of view. They can't understand why people think differently, and they're only going to produce a certain type of content. And at that moment, the content that they're producing is out of step with the vast majority of people, or the silent majority, as they're often known in this country.
The remarkable thing about everything we discussed is the similarities between the situation here in America and in the UK, the land of the indomitable bulldog spirit and the likes of Winston Churchill. I think it's not an accident that those two individuals who don't see themselves as conservatives, I'm talking about Francis Foster and Konstantin Kisin. Well, Francis's mother escaped from Venezuela, and Konstantin and his family escaped from the Soviet Union.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Mina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the Vice President of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this, I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive that the majority of mass shootings in the United States are carried out by white men. She's admitting that just because he was taken alive.
Here's a novel idea. Support an educational institution that actually teaches your values. Prager University. Go to prageruniversity.com and donate today. Hi, everybody. The male-female hour on the Dennis Prager Show. The subject today, second hour every Wednesday, the subject today is the aphorism, happy wife, happy life. Is it stated because of its truth or because of its ability to rhyme? I think both, but I think it's still true. And I'm bouncing this off you. I have another reason why I think the happiness of the wife has a bigger impact on a marriage than the happiness of the man. And I say this as a happy man, so I don't have any vested interest here. I have vested interest in many of these topics because I'm a man and I'm a married man, but in this case, I don't have one because I'm a happy guy and a happy husband. But this is what I would argue is another reason for why I think her happiness is more significant to the marriage. And that is, I believe that if he's happy and she's not, it's very difficult for his happiness to affect her. But if he's not happy and she is, I think that her ability to make him happier is greater than his ability to make her happier. What do you think of that? That's a provocative thought. I think that in a marriage, the woman has more power over the happiness of the marriage than the husband does. By the way, none of this is to absolve husbands from responsibility for making a good marriage. It's the furthest thing from my mind. I'm offering thoughts on what may be reality. Okie dokie. Let's see here. I got views from not forget all over geographically, all over in terms of ideas. All right, let's begin. It's interesting. It always amazes me when I see more calls from men on a micro subject. It's interesting. At least this show seems to go against the usual. There are many women who call in on macro and many men who call in on micro. In fact, I have 8 lines and there's only one female. That's amazing. So if I get rid of a few men for affirmative action, please don't be insulted. All righty, let's see. Okay. Chris in Aliso Viejo, California. Hi.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
I adore you, by the way.
Thank you. That's very kind.
The way I look at it is it's part of my job to make my wife happy and provide an environment where she can be happy. And that is where I derive my happiness. I don't need her to make me happy. It makes me happy to provide her a life.
Right, but let's be honest. That's beautiful. It is beautiful. But let's be honest. There's a completely honorably selfish motive as well. Because if she's happy, you'll be happy.
Absolutely.
All right.
That's the whole reason I do it.
Oh, well then.
Okay, maybe not the full. I haven't.
All right. Well, that was a big switcheroo from the opening statement. So wait. I just want to say you're affirming my thesis.
I may be, and it may have been Freudian.
Yes, it was.
It does.
Okay, that's my point. This was really priceless. Thank you, Chris. Dennis, I want you to know I derive my greatest happiness from making my wife happy. So Prager then offers the suggestion that perhaps there is a selfish motive in it, because if she's happy, he'll be happy and the marriage will be happy. Yes, exactly. In fact, that's the entire motive. That was a precious call. And I mean it in every sense of the word. I'm not in any way demeaning it. It is a precious call. It could not have more verified my working hypothesis had I tried. I work to make my wife happy because then I'll be happy if she's happy. That's my thesis. That's the power of happy wife, happy life. And why we don't have a corresponding one for man or husband, because it's in fact less significant. And I believe every human being, male and female, has a moral obligation to act happy. Remember, that's Chris. That was priceless, I have to say. All righty, and all right. Let me open up a line here. I'm definitely curious. I wonder how women are hearing this. I mean, here's a woman. We'll begin with her. Barbara in Cleveland. Hi, Barbara.
Hey. Okay, so yes, I think that is true. Happy wife, happy life. I'm taking some of the information I'm going to share with from a woman named Laura Doyle. She has a book named First Kill All the Marriage Counselors. And it's very interesting because she had a marriage that was very challenging. She had one foot out of the marriage. They went to marriage counseling, $9,000 later, nothing. And she found that in marriage counseling, they focus on the negative. Now, what she did after that, she realized that she started speaking with people that have good marriages, positive marriages, that have been married for at least 15 years. What have the wives been doing? And she found that one wife said, I try not to criticize my husband. Another one said, I let my husband take care of the finances. And she said, well, gosh, don't you have any other advice? But the truth is, she realized the wives that have these stable, happy marriages are doing certain things. And she found that what is the skill, what is the hallmark of a happy marriage is skill building, skills that the wife can do. So in other words, if the husband is critical, she says that that's an unconscious plea for attention or appreciation. If they're complaining, it's their awkward way that they want gratitude. So when they are kvetchy, when they are complaining, they just want attention. And a smart woman will acknowledge that about her husband and not be hurt, will step back, appreciate that, and give the husband what he needs.
Wow. Who wrote this?
Oh, her name is Laura Doyle, Doyle. And it's very interesting because she herself is not a therapist. She says in this practice that she does, all of the women that do this practice, they have to have happy marriages.
Wow. I'm going to look it up. A lot of wisdom there. So my working hypothesis may be valid. It's more in the woman's hands, the happiness of the marriage. We shall return. I'm Dennis Prager.
The Dennis Prager.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Regarding the filibuster, at John Lewis's funeral, President Barack Obama said he believed the filibuster was a relic of the Jim Crow era. Do you
Check,
agree?
stop.
Yes.
CNN does fact checks. I don't care if President Obama said that at John Lewis's funeral. I don't care if he says it on the steps of his house. I don't care if he walks out in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and says it's not true. It's false. It's a lie. So when CNN does that, they're using President Obama's lie to cover their own lie, and they're not fact-checking themselves. 4 questions about the filibuster, because the media is left-wing and wants to change the filibuster, which They did not complain about during the years that Chuck Schumer used the filibuster to frustrate Donald Trump for 4 years. Bob in Atlanta, what do you think, Bob?
Well, Hugh, I love listening to you, but I like to give you a hard time, too. So I'm going to cross-examine you. I'd like a yes or no answer. Do you think President Biden is that bright? I don't. I don't think he's that bright at all. What is your answer? Can you do a yes or no for me?
Yes or no. I think sometimes he's very bright, but often he exhibits the same sort of slowness that my father, when he was 78, exhibits. How's that?
Well, I'm not talking about that kind of dementia.
Not dementia. I mean, he takes a while to come up with the answer. I think he's bright. He's a learned guy. He's been around. But I think when you get to be 78, it takes a while for the gears to engage. I don't think he's got dementia. I just think he's slow. Slow Joe Biden.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
For 50 or so years, we've really not been teaching what does it mean to be free? What is self-government? What are we don't teach that. And so you drift along and something like this happens and people just sort of go along because Americans are nice. Who do you think is behind this?
Yeah, I've identified a lot of the bad actors. Big tech is up 24 billion, 26 billion, over 100 billion for, the 6 guys who run big tech. Amazon is up, triple digit billions, since last year. So, and they're all part of something called the COVID-19 Response Project, which started in March of last year to message how terrifying COVID was.
I'm fascinated in a way that there are so few voices like yours that you're still seeing what you've always seen. It's just that everything has shifted.
Yeah, I didn't leave the left left me, as my husband said. Well,
Reagan said,
oh, really? Is he quoting Reagan?
The Democratic Party left me. And I think this has been a drift over the decades, but it's gotten so dramatic that there are many folks like you, traditionally on the left, who are talking about the same things those of us on the conservative side are talking about.
Yes. And thank you, Eric, for noticing. I have been completely consistent in saying the same things ever since I wrote The End of America in 2007, criticizing each president as he arose for overreach when he overreached. I don't think there are that few of us. I think there are that few of us at a national level or in leadership. And I also think a lot of us are stunned.
Keep up.
Hi, everybody. The Male-Female Hour is the second hour every Wednesday. This is a biggie. It's bigger than I thought. This is one of those topics where I have a sense over the course of a lifetime, and it is not something I came up with yesterday. And then I think about it more, and I talk about it more, and I get your feedback, and it seems that it may be true, and it's not something that I don't think is often noted. If it's true, it's pretty big. That the wife has a greater impact on the happiness of the marriage than the man does. I'm not talking about abuse and infidelities and so on. I'm just talking about happiness. So happy wife, happy life turns out to be true, not because it rhymes, but because it's true. If that is the case. Misty in Mineral Wells, Texas. Hi, Misty.
Hi, Dennis. I just have to say that when I think of good people, you are in the top 5. You're awesome.
Wow. I'm very touched by that. Thank you.
Thank you. In regards to your topic today, in my case, happy wife, happy life does not apply, in my opinion. Our motto around the house, I like to repeat, is happy Ray, happy day. Or you could even say happy man, happy clan.
Okay, that works. Happy man, happy clan. You finally came up with something I've been looking for years. So what does it mean it doesn't work in your case?
He's more like the moody person.
Gotcha.
So,
and how does that impact the happiness of your marriage? Is he otherwise a good man?
Yes, but he is moody very often. So he helps people all the time. But I was told by an individual, a friend of ours, he's a good man, not a good partner. So you take that as it is.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's obviously painful for you to relate, and it's painful for me to hear. So, my generalized thesis you would reject. You think it's a, and by the way, that's fine. I opened up the show saying it was a hypothesis, but you would argue it's equally possible for either to hurt the marriage through their unhappiness.
I think that generally, because this is going to be, based off of what most people see in personality traits for a woman versus a man tends to be the more moody, meticulous person that will express their complaints continually. So I think that generally that would be the case. I think there are exceptions. So when having that blank statement, it won't apply to everyone.
When he is not in a bad mood, is the marriage happy?
Yes.
If he heard this conversation, what would he say?
He said I should treat you better. He's told me I should be better, but, just kind of waiting.
What do you think prevents him from acting better?
Personally, I've done a little research, and I think that he has narcissist disorder. So I don't know that anything could truly be changed.
You have kids?
No.
And you stay in the marriage because?
I think I have hope because we didn't date for several years, and so there was a strong longing and desire for him. So I have hope that I would get back to that. And then commitment. I don't know, I just don't like to quit people. I'm a very loyal person. Loyal to a fault.
Do you want children?
Yes, but only if I don't have to work a full-time job.
Well, Misty, I adore you too. Thank you for calling.
Thank you, Dennis. God bless you.
Well, that was a powerful call. Powerful because it was honest. She's articulate. If nothing else, I hope you all realize why I have a happiness hour each week and how adamant I am that people act happy even if they don't feel it. I am sort of on a crusade against the moody. Folks, it's time for Relief Factor. You have 3 weeks to figure out if it works because it only takes 3 weeks to know. So they have a special price for you for 3 weeks, $19.95 plus shipping. And if it doesn't work, you cancel the order. So they don't drag it on. You know pretty quickly. I just ask you to take as directed during those 3 weeks. Relief Factor is for joint pain and muscle pain. It is a spectacular product, hence you hear about it that often. Read the testimonials at relieffactor.com. Place your order there for the 3-week quick start, or call 800-500-8384. 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
FF, BBC, salvageable?
Right. The problem is that whenever I'm confronted with this question, I immediately hark back to my childhood, the great comedies of the BBC, the wonderful documentaries it produces, David Attenborough, etc.
It's like ancient history. The two Ronnies. It's like ancient history.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have such affection for the quality of content that they used to produce.
Right.
The problem is I think they've gone too far down a particular route, and not even with the content they produce, but with the people that they hire. They tend to be, university educated. They tend to be very liberal, very metropolitan, very pro-Remain, etc., etc. So, and the problem is when you get a certain type of person, you create essentially a large echo chamber.
Yeah.
And at that point,
I think it's not an accident that those two individuals who don't see themselves as conservatives, I'm talking about Francis Foster and Konstantin Kisin. Well, Francis's mother escaped from Venezuela, and Konstantin and his family escaped from the Soviet Union.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Mina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the vice president of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this, I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive that the majority of mass shootings in the United States are carried out by white men. She's admitting that just because he was taken alive, she used prejudice and stereotypes
Town Hall TV, as well as our website. If you want to watch the show, not just listen, go to townhall.com and click on the Town Hall TV button.
I did not know how this hour would go because it was just a hunch based on a lifetime of thought, marriage, divorce, remarriage. I mean, I've lived it. And I wondered if there was validity to it. It's sort of like my wondering about I had another hunch for a show, a male-female hour, about women in America turning 29 years of age, and that for very many it was a tremendous soul-searching year with tremendous internal changes. And women calling in validated it. Likewise here, I've raised the question of, is happy wife, happy life just a nice rhyme, or is there a lot of truth to it? That her happiness might affect the marriage even more than his happiness. And I'll tell you, the next time you hear a man say, I just want to make my wife happy, remember that it's not just he's a nice guy. He may well be a terrific guy. It's a beautiful sentiment. But it's really, and that's fine, but it really is about him and the marriage. If I make my wife happy, I'll be happy. Okie dokie, let's go to more of your calls. And Cynthia in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Wasn't it just the other day you said to me, how come we're not getting more calls from Ambler? Can't believe it.
Can you hear me all right?
I do. Thank you.
Good.
Good. Well, thank you for taking my call. I'm a long-time listener. I love your show.
Good.
And I love your Men and Women Hour especially.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, so I had to call in because a previous caller said she would love to get rid of all of the marriage counselors.
Right.
And I happen to be a marriage counselor, and so I have to push back against that because I've seen wonderful things happen through counseling with my clients.
Mm-hmm. I believe both are right. The psychotherapists that I have respected have all said that the majority of their colleagues are not particularly competent.
Yes.
Okay.
And I happen to be a Christian. I happen to be a Christian counselor, and so I put a lot of stock. My whole basis is counseling from the Bible, and it goes right back to Ephesians 5. And men are really all about respect, and women really seek love. So that speaks to your premise there that when women feel loved, encouraged, supported within the home, and that happiness is sort of a cliche, happy wife, happy life. But when a woman feels that she's supported within the home, she has more peace, and then that automatically transfers to her husband, who also feels loved.
So do you believe that my working hypothesis is accurate or not? That the woman's happiness is even more significant to the happiness of the home or of the marriage than the husband's?
I wouldn't say it's more important, but I'd say it's very, very significant.
Well, if it's not more important, then you would say both are very, very significant.
I'd say both, but I think I would have to say that the woman more so.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Okay. That's my to hearing. I'm sorry to let you go. I truly am. I want to get as many calls as I can. But thank you. It's very appreciated. When there's a good therapist, whether it's regular psychotherapy or marital therapy, anybody who has a good therapist should thank God. So I appreciate that. All right. So there's a vote from a therapist. On behalf of my working hypothesis. Okay. And New York City and Steve. Hello, Steve of New York. Dennis Prager.
Hey, hi, Dennis. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well. What borough do you live in?
I live in Queens.
Okay.
And I actually saw you when you were here in New York with, oh, my God, his name just slipped me.
Yeah, because it really doesn't matter. You saw me. Of course you forget the other name.
Eric Metaxas, yes.
Oh, Eric Metaxas. No wonder you forgot the name. That makes perfect sense. Do you know, I just want you to know, Eric and I, and one other couple, we had dinner with the Vice President of the United States a couple of months ago, and most of the time I spent ripping into Eric Metaxas. I truly believe the vice president regretted inviting me. All right, go ahead.
All right. So anyway, I'm going to make two quick points. What I was telling your call screener was that while in principle I may believe in a happy wife, happy life, but I think there's more to it than that. In that, if the husband is respected, then, he'll have the wherewithal to continue to make his wife happy. But without the respect that he may or should get, then it might not be a happy marriage.
Right. So then, though you're not addressing, that's fine, specifically the happiness topic, you are also, I think, arguing that the happiness of the marriage is more in her hands than his.
Well, I think it's both equally.
Equally. Okay. All right. So you're a vote for equal.
Right. And then the other thing, real quickly, is that when you first said that, and I've heard the term too, the term happiness. What actually constitutes happiness?
Well, believe me, that's another issue. I deal with that in my book. There's really no definition that would help anybody. It's a sort of like the Supreme Court justice said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. I think the same thing to a large extent about happiness. Okay, we continue. This is the Male-Female Hour. I'm Dennis Prager.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Studio. Of course, nobody brought up during the press conference that polls show that Americans want voter ID, including black Americans. Yet your party trashes voter ID as voter suppression. Can you please explain how it is that black people want something that you call voter suppression? That didn't come up. Nor did the stunt that Tammy Duckworth and Macy Hirono tried to pull come up. Two Asian American senators, Democrats. A couple days ago, they told Biden that they weren't going to confirm any more new nominees until and unless he appoints an Asian American to a high-level position. Mr. President, what is your reaction to being pressured to put someone in your administration based on skin color, as opposed to performance, as opposed to your comfort level with him or her, as opposed to background? Is this the direction we should be taking America, Mr. President? When you said you wanted a cabinet that looked like America, you're implying that unless the cabinet is racially reflective of the country, then it's an invalid cabinet, invalid administration. Is that what you're telling us? Should we do that with the NBA, Mr. President? Should we do that with doctors? Should we do that with people who design bridges? Airline pilots? Should we hire based upon racial diversity and proportionality as opposed to competence? I'm asking.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Regarding the filibuster, at John Lewis's funeral, President Barack Obama said he believed the filibuster was a relic of the Jim Crow era. Do you
Check,
agree?
stop.
Yes.
CNN does fact checks. I don't care if President Obama said that at John Lewis's funeral. I don't care if he says it on the steps of his house. I don't care if he walks out in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and says it's not true. It's false. It's a lie. So when CNN does that, they're using President Obama's lie to cover their own lie, and they're not fact-checking themselves. 4 questions about the filibuster, because the media is left-wing and wants to change the filibuster, which they did not complain about during the years that Chuck Schumer used the filibuster to frustrate Donald Trump for 4 years. Bob in Atlanta, what do you think, Bob?
Well, Hugh, I love listening to you, but I like to give you a hard time, too. So I'm going to...
Join the movement that's disrupting the left's monopoly on education. Join Prager University. Go to prageruniversity.com and donate today.
Follow that plan. How long will I be with you? As long as the sea is bound to.
Okay, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Got very intelligent calls, as always. And what do I do? Let me see here. California, Texas, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio, and Oregon. All right. Aaron was on from the very beginning. I have pity on the guy. Aaron in San Diego, Dennis Prager. Hi.
Hey, Dennis. I think you hit the nail on the head with one point earlier that it's more acceptable for females to show their emotions, so their unhappiness probably causes more unhappiness in the household. But as a divorce lawyer for 15 years, they also have a better capacity to be able to take the husband's kids and have his stuff away. so their happiness is of more paramount importance.
Yeah, that's a different take on the subject. Aaron, I appreciate that. I need to do an hour with divorce lawyers. That's what I'm going to do. Aaron, thank you. Let's note that. Let's have a male-female hour, talk to divorce lawyers. What have they learned? Ironically, and I have great respect for marital counselors who do a good job, which I think is a minority, but so what? That minority does a good job. But I think I would be more interested to talk to divorce lawyers about what they have learned about marriage. Not about divorce, what they have learned about marriage. Okay, let's see here. Tom in Beaverton, Oregon. Hi.
Dennis?
Yes.
Did you say Beaverton?
That's what I have here.
Beaverton.
Okay, so we have to put the. He's arguing that we wouldn't put her in the punishment room.
Well,
okay.
That's okay.
All right. Thank you, Beaverton. No. I want to know the right
I'm not
thing.
married to Beaverton, but
No.
So anyway, Dennis, am I on?
Yes, please go quick. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So listen, I'm listening to your show and I'm thinking of an old Jimmy Stewart movie back in the 50s or 60s, and Jimmy Stewart, he's the dad and he has a daughter. And his daughter, there's a young man who wants to marry, and the young man comes to him like we did in the old days and says, "Sir, I want to marry your daughter."
And?
Hello?
Yes, and
Jimmy Stewart says, "Well, do you like her?" And the guy says, "Oh, sir, I love her." And Jimmy Stewart says, "Well, of course you love her, but do you like her?"
Oh, by the way, you did a good Jimmy Stewart imitation. Well done. This was an important subject. Happy wife, happy life turns out to be pretty profound. We continue on the Dennis Prager Show.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. The Congressional Budget Office just released its new debt figures. The national debt this year will top 102% of GDP. This has only happened twice before, both during World War II. This number does not count the proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, nor does it count the money which was borrowed from Social Security, since that's considered intergovernmental debt. Debt levels this high break the intergenerational covenant that we have with our children and grandchildren. FDR borrowed to defeat the Nazis and Imperial Japan. Money well spent. Reagan borrowed to defeat the Soviet Union. That was also money well spent. These great projects made the world better for future generations. But our political class is not buying victories against international threats. They are buying political victories for incumbents. This is nothing more than fiscal abuse, and our kids will pay the price. It needs to stop now. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
FF, BBC, salvageable.
Right. The problem is that whenever I'm confronted with this question, I immediately hark back to my childhood, the great comedies of the BBC, the wonderful documentaries it produces, David Attenborough, etc.
It's like ancient history. The two Ronnies. It's like ancient history.
Yeah, and I have such affection for the quality of content that they used to produce. Right. The problem is I think they've gone too far down a particular route, and not even with the content they produce, but with the people that they hire. They tend to be, university educated. They tend to be very liberal, very metropolitan, very pro-Remain, etc., etc. So, and the problem is when you get a certain type of person, you create essentially a large echo chamber. Yeah. And at that point, they can't see somebody else's point of view. They can't understand why people think differently, and they're only going to produce a certain type of content. And at that moment, the content that they're producing is out of step with the vast majority of people, or the silent majority, as they're often known in this country.
The remarkable thing about everything we discussed is the similarities between the situation here in America and in the UK, the land of the indomitable bulldog spirit and the likes of Winston Churchill. I think it's not an accident that those two individuals who don't see themselves as conservatives, I'm talking about Francis Foster and Konstantin Kisin, well, Francis's mother escaped from Venezuela, and Konstantin and his family escaped from the Soviet Union.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Mina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the vice president of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this, I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive that the majority of mass shootings in the United States are carried out by white men. She's admitting that just because he was taken alive, she used prejudice and stereotypes to categorize him as a violent white man. But this sort of bigotry and this sort of over-racialization of every single incident is intentional. Barack Hussein Obama, the former president of the United States, came out and said that what happened in Boulder is because of racism and misogyny. I'm paraphrasing. That's the essence of his remarks. Tucker Carlson went after Barack Obama last evening, calling him a racial arsonist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
In fact, I've got a theory. As the Biden administration is now looking at housing migrants at military bases, as the Biden administration is spending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on motel rooms. Brand names, by the way. This isn't just your dude drop in. I'm sure this is the good stuff. ICE has signed a deal worth $89.6 million with a Texas nonprofit to shelter migrants in hotel rooms as the feds process a massive backlog of new arrivals at the border. This deal was announced the other day as illegals are arriving at the border at a rate we haven't seen in decades. ICE has signed a short-term contract with the nonprofit division of Endeavors to provide temporary shelter and processing services for families who have not been expelled and are therefore placed in immigration proceedings for their removal from the United States. The $86.9 million contract provides 1,239 beds and other necessary services. Somebody get out a calculator and do 86.
you divide the world by economics, by classes, not by nations. And that's the battle. That's a big part of what I call the Civil War in the United States. I'm going to talk to a man that I have come to admire, John Zmirak, Z-M-I, or for those of you in Canada and England, Z-M-I-R-A-K, senior editor of The Stream, a very fine and important website. And he has a new book with Al Parata, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. And I just want to say before I get to Mr. Zmirak, every one of the politically incorrect guides that I have read has been just spectacular. And in case you're wondering, it's published by Regnery. My latest book is published by Regnery. All my other 8 books are not published by Regnery. So it has nothing to do with the fact that I have this affiliation. I've said this before I ever had my last book published. But I do like to reveal everything, so I'm just telling you that. The politically incorrect guides are superb. This one has just come out. It is up at DennisPrager.com, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. And John Zmirak, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you. It's great to be on such a crucial subject for our country. That when we started writing this book, I never imagined that abolishing ICE would become a mainstream position of the Democratic Party. I never thought that a Venezuelan-style socialist would be elected to Congress from New York City, from somewhere near my old neighborhood. You know, I'm from Queens, not far away from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or as I like to call her, Alexandria Evita Perón's new district.
Yep, nobody would have imagined, but I'm not shocked because these are all traditional left-wing positions. As I said earlier, the nation-state doesn't deserve to exist, and they really do, and I want to get to this in a moment. Whether you agree with me, and please know, I tell all of my guests, it is perfectly okay not to agree with me, my position here is the left does not believe in borders. Before, however, I talk to you about immigration, sir, I need to tell you that in the 1,000, God knows how many books I have read, the dedications of you and your co-author are the weirdest that I have ever read.
I don't remember what I wrote.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
I have 13 books, so I don't remember.
Okay, well, I'll tell you in a moment. If yours is, it'll be revealed in a moment why it's a bit strange. But your co-author's is by far the longest.
Yeah.
It is sort of like an introduction, not a dedication. But in any event, I get a big kick out of that. I always look at the people's dedications. You wrote for Patty Fain, a most tolerant and forgiving older sister. How many men have written, or women, a dedication of their book to their older sister? It is a first in my experience. And for Anthony Ottaviano, who introduced the young Niles Crane to garage bands.
That's right. Well, my sister was sort of tasked with raising me because my mother kind of checked out, and I want to thank her for not strangling me, for being an insufferably precocious young Niles Crane. And Anthony Ottaviano was my working-class Italian friend who was in garage bands. And, when I was about to go to high school, kind of a tough high school, he said, okay, what music do you like? And I said, I don't know, Tchaikovsky. He said, no, you're going to get your ass kicked. In fact, I kind of want to kick your ass. You got to find some rock bands, and you got to learn to like them so you can tell people so they won't kick your ass. So thank you, Anthony.
All right. Okay, I got you. By the way, just for the record, folks, you are practicing and religious Catholic, correct?
That's right. That's right. Despite Pope Francis, I'm toughing it out.
Right. All right. I want the people to know that, and I respect that a great deal. And that is a very fair statement on your part. All right, let's go to immigration. Let's begin with number one, because really the unspoken issue is, do you believe, not you personally, John, but do you, the individual, believe in borders, period? The left does not. Am I exaggerating their position?
I think that has become their position for cynical political reasons. I think if right-wing Cubans or right-wing Venezuelan refugees from socialism were pouring into the U.S., they would believe in borders. Jerry Brown told Ronald Reagan he would not take the Cambodian and Vietnamese boat people in California. He said, go to hell. You're not sending them to my state. And that was because he knew they would vote Republican. So I think we're flattering the Democrats by attributing some principled motivation. They just want warm bodies who will collect welfare and vote Democrat. Just the way Paul Ryan and the establishment Republican swamp wants cheap labor. And together, those two forces have kept our border open.
Now you know why this is such an important book. That was one great answer. Yep.
Thank you. I mean,
in other words, what you're saying is it transcends some abstract philosophical view of borders and national identity. It is simple, cynical political calculation.
Which is the same reason the Catholic bishops support mass immigration from Latin America, because 40% of native-born Catholics leave the church, according to the Pew Research Center. 40%. And yet, the number of Catholics in America has stayed even. Meanwhile, other churches like the Episcopals and Methodists and Presbyterian USA, people are leaving in droves because of their liberal leadership, but there are no immigrants to replace them. So those denominations are collapsing. The Catholic bishops are able to hide their failure to preach the gospel, catechize, do pro-life work, and generally keep the seminaries from becoming lavender choreography camps. They're able to cover that up because of a constant flow of Catholics from countries where the bishops are better. And so they're still Catholic for a while, then they come to America and they leave the church too. I know what you mean, but explain it. Lavender choreography camps. Oh, well, I mean, you just saw the former Archbishop of our nation's capital, Theodore McCarrick, was molested a teenager and was molesting his own seminarians for 20 years. And other bishops knew and did nothing about it. There's a very high, disproportionate percentage of gay men in the Catholic priesthood. The bishop's own study from the John Jay Institute put the estimate at between 20% and 53%. Compare that to 2% of the general population. It's a major, major issue to have a church that condemns homosexual behavior. A lot of the priests are engaging in it. You add that to any number of factors, and the Catholic Church, while we have the doctrines of a traditional conservative faith, we're being run like a mainline Protestant church like the Episcopals, which pretty soon will just be real estate holding company. And only immigration papers this over. That's why the bishops go to the southern border to protest Trump's immigration policies. You don't see them at abortion clinics, except one or two. You don't see them denouncing Catholic politicians who support partial birth abortion and defend Planned Parenthood. No, they go after Donald Trump. They go after politicians who want to control our country's borders, which is completely in accord with Catholic teaching in the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
Well, you'd have to be a Catholic to be able to make such charges, and you are a Catholic. People would otherwise say is an anti-Catholic thing, which is terrible.
I published 8 books defending the Catholic faith.
I believe you. So let me review for my listeners. The Democrats, the church, and the employers all have a vested interest in vast amounts of Latin American immigration.
And also Muslim immigration, just unskilled immigration is the key thing. I don't think you or I would mind if PhDs in engineering were coming here from Venezuela to escape that evil socialist government. But what's happening is we're getting legal immigration of around 1 million people per year. Almost half of them are high school dropouts. Most of them don't have skills or education that match the jobs we have to offer in the United States. That's all I'm talking about. We are flooding the country with cheap labor. At the same time, we've outsourced most low-skilled jobs to Asia and Latin America and Africa. So what jobs are there for these people?
All right, hold on. Now you know why I consider this book so important. This man's thought this through, and he's gutsy. It's called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. I'm opening up the lines. 1-8-PRAGER-776. His name is John Zmirak.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
My theory is that the reason the left is pivoting and desperately trying to focus on gun control is that'll be the shiny object that takes all the attention away from the crisis we have along the border. There's no way Democrats can possibly explain this surge by illegals. And yes, I know the mainstream media wants to call them migrants, but they are, after all, illegals. There's no way to explain this other than the Biden administration's invitation to come in. I saw clips last night of candidate Joe Biden saying, we want a couple million people. We want people here. We're America. And now, of course, there's a real catastrophe unfolding. And ground zero seems to be Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You know what I'm really worried about is white males in this country. Those are the people committing the most
Me. So you're worried about me?
Yes.
If I said I'm worried about black males, that would be a racist thing, right? You just said white males. That's pretty racist.
They have to shoot it.
Love, not hate, makes America great.
Look at some of the Nazi propaganda about the Jews, and you see a lot of stuff that's really similar to what people are saying about the Jews.
I wouldn't equate what's going on today with the rise of the Third Reich. Would you?
What did you just say? You don't think it is part of the Third Reich?
No, I would not equate Donald Trump with the rise of the Third Reich.
I do believe we're a white supremacist country.
If we're such a racist country, why is it that Asian Americans and Indian Americans are actually richer than white Americans on average? Didn't Obama separate 90,000 kids from their parents?
I don't know. What is your source on that?
Does that make this right? Department of Homeland Security. In fact, Bernie Sanders put on his website in 2015, Dear Obama, stop separating parents from their
I have to read up on that.
Well, all the images they're using on television of children in cages, those were taken under Obama. I mean, Obama separated 90,000 kids and there were no protests.
Okay, so now we're interviewing you.
Well, no, I'm just saying a sentence. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You protested under Obama, right? But there were no protests like this. Why?
It wasn't
no hate speak. There was no hate speak behind what he did. I mean, there was no. It didn't come with all that evil, hateful rhetoric.
Like what? Give me an example. I think illegals should be deported, or
illegal?
Like illegal immigrants.
What's
Illegals.
illegal? What's illegal?
Someone who is not here legally. Like someone who broke federal immigration law to come into the country.
Well, maybe there's a reason, you know.
So there's a reason that it's okay to break laws at times. So if I'm hungry, I can rob a store, essentially, because that's a reason.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
We have to do a better job of convincing the other side how wrong the policies are of the left. They've destroyed the family, destroyed jobs with things like minimum wages. We need to make the better argument. The fact that
you can see visual highlights of my show every day on my YouTube channel. So sign up today, go to youtube.com, type in Dennis Prager Channel, and click subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you'll be notified every time we put up a new clip. Before I return to my guest, John Zmirak, senior editor of The Stream, co-author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. This book is up at my website. The phone number is 1-8-PRAGER-776. This is you described in the first segment what I would characterize as an unholy alliance of the Catholic Church, the Democratic Party, and Republican big business. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
Nope.
Yeah, I would also throw in labor unions, which have given up on ordinary American workers. The labor union movement used to be strongly in favor of controlling immigration for the simple reason of supply and demand. Because of the massive wave of unskilled immigration since the 1965 Act that Ted Kennedy drew up, I think on a bar napkin in Boston, we've had an influx of low-skilled labor and a total flattening of working-class wages. The working class in America has not had a pay raise adjusted for inflation in 40 years. And that has coincided with a mass influx of low-skilled labor.
So what does this tell you about labor unions?
Well, that they're controlled by the government union, by the SEIU and the teachers' unions. They have hijacked control of the labor movement. It's not the Teamsters, it's not the factory workers, it's the bureaucracy people, the paper pushers. And you know what?
Wait, forgive me. What do they have to gain?
Well, because there are more clients for their welfare agencies, more students for the public schools.
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked. So it's not ideological as much as it is simple, hey, this is great for us and our pocketbooks.
That's right. The more social dysfunction there is, the more broken families, the more poor people, the more jobs there are for welfare workers who are members of their union.
It's painful.
It's that cynical. I mean,
I believe you.
Because we're thinker, we're in sort of strive to be intellectuals. We look for the intellectual explanation. That's usually the fig leaf. Peel it away and you see the real junk, and it's self-interest.
Oh, is it painful? Let me go to some calls here. There's a lot I want to ask you, but I would like to take some calls. This is a very passionate subject among people. Valencia, California, and Mike. Hello, Mike. You're on with John Zmirak and Dennis Prager.
Good morning to both of you gentlemen. I am a cradle Episcopalian, and my thought to the author and to you, Dennis, respectfully, is that when the well-intentioned author speaks about Episcopalians in such terms as, well, pretty soon they'll be simply holding real estate, that prompts someone like me to call. My point to you and to the author is simply this. The Episcopal Church nationwide is a very diverse church. In some areas, it is growing, and in some areas of the country, it's not. Similarly,
where is it growing? I'm simply curious. Where is it growing?
Immigration and in other
No. Mike. No, Mike. Oh, this is always painful. I don't understand. I never talk like that. Mike, I'm asking you a question. I'll let you continue. Okay, he's been talking the whole time. All right, I'm sorry. Bye, Mike. I drive me crazy. Yes, I want you to respond, but I just want to say to callers, folks, you can't be a recording. Not only on the air, in personal life, one has to hear when another person wishes to talk as well. But anyway, go ahead.
I apologize if I offended the feelings of anything.
All right, I don't think you have to apologize in the least. Okay, mainstream Protestantism. Let me say, as a Jew, okay, mainstream Judaism has been taken over by the left. There are exceptional rabbis in the Reform and Conservative and Reconstructionist movement. They are exceptions. There are rabbis who fasted when Donald Trump was elected. There are synagogues that sat Shiva. Say you're talking about your Catholic church. I'll talk about my Jewish synagogues. that mainstream Judaism, mainstream Protestantism, and mainstream Catholicism are left-wing movements. It is the tragedy of the three religions.
I agree with you, and I think what I was saying was the Catholic Church is able to mask the impact, the church-killing impact of accepting liberal theology and having libertine priests only by flooding the churches with immigrants. 1 out of 4 American Catholics was not born in the United States. 1 out of 4. What does that tell you? That the natives are leaving. They're drifting away. They're maybe joining evangelical churches. Maybe they're becoming unchurched because of the mediocrity, heresy, and just general blah attitude that prevails in most parishes. Not all of them. There are good parishes, especially the Latin Mass parishes, which you're seeing a lot of life and energy and vocations and apostolic activity. But the overall trend is the church shrinking by 40%, and that being covered over with the Band-Aid of Latin American immigration. And that's why the Catholic bishops, they'll say something about abortion once in a while, but what really threatens their bread and butter is enforcing America's borders.
So you've explained why the public service government unions want more and more unskilled immigrants. You've explained why the Catholic Church does. You've explained why big business and some of their Republican allies do. So explain to me why the black leadership would welcome this.
Well, I've spoken to conservative African-American pastors about this. And they have told me it's money, that the left-wing black leaders are getting tons of money from the Democratic Party, and they don't want to see that money train cut off, even though the Democratic Party's policies are disastrous, catastrophic for ordinary, hardworking black Americans.
I agree. That and ideology, I still think that's a factor, but left is left. Even if left ruins your own group, it still has its appeal. It's a religious thing. All right. We'll be back. Is that correct? We're ready to go? Is that music? Yeah. All right. John Zmirak is the co-author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. The book is up at DennisPrager.com. Anyone can watch Prager University courses anywhere in the world for free, and we want to keep it that way, but we can only do it if we have your support. Go to PragerUniversity.com and donate today.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The question is, will Joe Manchin, in a 51-50 vote for massive tax hikes on individuals and corporations? What is the answer to that? Because they're not going to break the filibuster here. They're going to just try for 51-50.
Well, I think from my conversations anyway with people who are involved in the discussions around this package, this is going to be in some ways the Rebuild West Virginia bill. So, they're not stupid. They know Joe Manchin wants to go back to West Virginia and, be the king, bring rural broadband and so I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but, just picture, Joe Manchin sort of striding into West Virginia and the roads are paved, plated in gold, and there's high-speed broadband there, and everything's, wonderful. So they're going to give him so much that it's going to be very hard for him to walk away from it. Now, I think there's a conversation, is he going to be comfortable with 28, hiking the corporate tax rate to 28? Probably not. He's indicated that that's probably a bit too high, so maybe the corporate rate settles around 25. But I think the incentives are going to be so high for him as it relates to his own state that I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him to walk away from it.
You see, then they have to go work on Kristen Sinema, who is trying to establish for herself the John McCain legacy in Arizona. And there's an Angus King problem.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It doesn't seem to me, when you read the Federalist Papers and the Constitution, that it's possible that the founders could have foreseen anything along the lines of big tech in America. The power that is in these few companies, clearly our Congress doesn't know what to do about it. They don't have any clue that the free market is not an idol to be worshipped. It's a part of a larger freedom. And so here we are.
I don't think the founders could have envisioned it, but they had correctives for it, which is why we need to, really rise up peacefully and use the First Amendment of the Constitution to fight back. If we weren't in quote unquote lockdown, we could assemble in our town halls, in our churches, in our synagogues and mosques and talk to each other. But lockdown prevents us from using our First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights, and that's intentional. So all of our speech is forced onto these social media platforms. And then to just finish the kind of evil circle, big tech has been purging conservative voices, which I discussed with Tucker Carlson a few nights ago. And big tech is also an embrace with my team, the Democrats. But what's going to happen is a closed circle of all speech being, cleansed of conservative voices. And then there's another, influencer, which is, very dark, which is China. A lot of thoughtful people with whom I'm in touch who are in the world of statecraft and analysis are very concerned that China is also exploiting, our vulnerability to weaken us. Look at what's happening to our country. We're not learning our history. Our history's under attack.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. The Congressional Budget Office just released its new debt figures. The national debt this year will top 102% of GDP. This has only happened twice before, both during World War II. This number does not count the proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, nor does it count the money which was borrowed from Social Security, since that's considered intergovernmental debt. Debt levels this high break the intergenerational covenant that we have with our children and grandchildren. FDR borrowed to defeat the Nazis.
It may be hard for you to stop and believe, but for you, ooh, I divido. Ooh, for you, ooh, I divido.
Here's a novel idea. Support an educational institution that actually teaches your values. Prager University. Go to prageruniversity.com and donate today. All right, everybody. John Zmirak, Z-M-I-R-A-K, senior editor of...
I'm going to have it in time.
Okay, you're back on, John.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if you were holding me over for another segment.
I would say goodbye. Just so you'll know. You're too interesting. I'm keeping you on.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. I'm sorry if it's a little loud here. I haven't been able to find a really quiet place to
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
All right, great.
Let me just no. Let me remind everybody. I want to sell your book. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right. I knew you'd agree.
Yeah, not going to fight you there.
The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. Another great politically incorrect guide. That's a whole series of books. This one is terrific. And you have opened my eyes. Your point about the public service unions was revelatory. I mean, it made so much sense. Go ahead.
It's disturbing. These agencies grow with social dysfunction.
That's right.
So if we had intact families of blue-collar workers able to buy their own home and as stay-at-home wives and kids go to college, they would go out of business. They depend on bringing in broken families from Latin America. Basically, they think it's like creating jobs for glass makers by running around breaking all the store windows
That's correct.
That's what our government agencies.
Well, I would go further. I have said this. I have written this, and I have said this for decades. In every arena of life, if there is health, it is bad for the Democrats and the left. If men and women get married and have children, they will vote Republican. Just that alone. It is in the, whether Democrats individually feel one way or another is not my point, but the Democratic Party benefits from dysfunction. If a black says, I am lucky to be an American, whites are not generally racist, that is terrible for the Democrats. Any arena of health is bad for the Democratic Party.
Unfortunately so. I mean, I think legitimate idealism might have been at work in the 1960s when they created the war on poverty. They probably thought they really were helping people. But it was clear by the mid-'70s that they were hurting people, and they didn't stop. I wanted to make a point earlier about Jesse Jackson. In the 70s, he was pro-life. He called abortion black genocide, which, in fact, it is. More black children are aborted in New York City than born alive. Planned Parenthood puts its clinics in the ghetto for a reason, because its founder, Margaret Sanger, was a eugenicist who worked with Nazi racist eugenicist scientists. She actually worked with one doctor who ran a concentration camp in Africa during World War I, killing and experimenting on Africans. She invited that guy, Fritz Haber, to speak at one of her conferences. Her eugenics laws were imposed in America in 13 American states, basically sterilizing and in some cases castrating Americans who failed culturally biased IQ tests. The Nazis used Planned Parenthood's laws as the model for their eugenics laws, and then in gratitude, they flew Harry Laughlin, one of Margaret Sanger's closest associates, they flew him to Germany and gave him an honorary Nazi degree. So it is black genocide. But you know what? Jesse Jackson changed his tune in 1980 when he decided to run for president.
Okay. These are among the many important points I could talk to you about. I want to return directly to immigration. Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. These are very fair points, and I raised it tangentially. I need to get your explanation now of the child separation issue.
Okay, that was very simple. There's a ridiculous legal decree, the Flores decree, which says that illegal immigrant children, cannot be held longer than 3 weeks.
What year was that? What year was that decision?
I think that was in the late 90s. Well, Bush was
that the Ninth Circuit?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
And that means if you're going to keep the families together, you can't hold the adult illegal immigrants any longer than 3 weeks. It takes longer than 3 weeks to process the phony asylum claims that George Soros lawyers are teaching these people how to file. And so having a child with you is a get-out-of-jail-free card. And what that means is that the traffickers, the cartels that control the Mexican border, they're taking children and selling them as get-out-of-jail-free cards for immigrants.
Okay, hold on there. This is really, I want to continue to explain this to people. I'm going to take calls. You know, folks, I get approached by many companies wanting me to endorse their product or service. But I actually reached out to Nerve Renew on my own. I wanted them to know that their product helped the nerve damage in my feet so much that after using it for about a year, I stopped using my shoe inserts after needing them for almost 10 years. That's the pins and needles, numbness, burning in your hands or feet from nerve damage. Well, Nerve Renew greatly helped me, and over the last 10 years has helped over 300,000 people. They are so confident that their product can help you, they offer a 2-week trial of their product and a 1-year money-back guarantee. Go to nerverenew.com, order your 2-week trial now. That's nerverenew.com, nerverenew.com.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, came out and tweeted this, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country." Now, of course, this is not true. The shooter was not a white man. It was a Muslim, a Syrian immigrant to our country who killed 10 people. Nina Harris then went on Twitter, and her correction was almost worse than her actual original statement, which is a pretty stunning thing to say. Now, this is the niece of the vice president of the United States making a remarkably bigoted statement, stereotyping someone immediately as being a violent white man. She said this: I deleted a previous tweet about the suspect in the Boulder shooting. I made an assumption based on his being taken into custody alive that the majority of mass shootings in the United States are carried out by white men. She's admitting that just because he was taken alive, she used prejudice and stereotypes to categorize him as a violent white man. But this sort of bigotry and this sort of over-racialization of every single incident is intentional. Barack Hussein Obama, the former president of the United States, came out and said that what happened in Boulder is because of racism and misogyny. I'm paraphrasing. That's the essence of his remarks. Tucker Carlson went after Barack Obama last evening, calling him a racial arsonist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
In fact, I've got a theory. As the Biden administration is now looking at housing migrants at military bases, as the Biden administration is spending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on motel rooms. Brand names, by the way. This isn't just your dude drop in. I'm sure this is the good stuff. ICE has signed a deal worth $89.6 million with a Texas nonprofit to shelter migrants in hotel rooms as the feds process a massive backlog of new arrivals.
Visual highlights of my show every day on my YouTube channel. So sign up today. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you'll be notified every time we put up a new clip. Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. John Zmirak, senior editor of The Stream, co-author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, just published. Strongly recommended. We're talking about this family separation issue. Now, I don't think most Americans, or even many Americans, understand that the reason families are separated is exactly what you described earlier, because a liberal court said that children cannot be away from parents for more than 20 days.
No, sorry. We can't hold children, period, for 20 days.
I'm sorry, that's right. Yes, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Correct. Children.
Yeah, So if we're going to keep them with their parents, if we can't prove that they don't have an asylum claim in 3 weeks, we have to let them go and they never come back.
That's right.
So they essentially to get out of jail free card. And a lot of them are not really their parents. The Obama administration was practicing catch and release, and 10,000 immigrant children ended up being released to people who were not their family. They'd been smuggled in by cartels, by people smugglers.
Where did you get that figure?
Washington Post.
Wow.
They were found. These kids were found working as slave laborers, 12-hour days in egg factories. Some of them doubtless got sucked up into child pornography. I mean, these are gangs like MS-13 control the Mexican border. Okay, cartels that had murdered more than 1,000 Mexican politicians in calendar year 2018. Do you think these people are not feeding into the sex industry and child pornography industry? They murder whole families without a second thought, and they practically run Mexico. If we don't build a wall, our country will be dominated by the cartels in 20 years the way Mexico is today.
The Trump administration, I believe, has now advocated DNA testing to make sure that the adult is actually the parent. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good plan. That is a good plan, but what we really need to do is cut this off at the root, wall off the border, and change asylum, as Sessions has proposed changing asylum, so that we don't have frivolous asylum claims like, my husband beats me. Okay, well, if your husband beats you, move to another town. You don't have to move to the United States of America.
What about the Ted Cruz bill?
That was a very good bill that, of course, the Democrats opposed because it took away their bloody shirt. It took away their issue. The Democrats want children to be separated from their parents because it creates good photo ops that they can use to win the
Were
next
children
election.
separated from their parents under the Obama administration?
Yes, they switched to doing that because they discovered they were giving children to human traffickers who were being used as slave laborers, so they stopped catch and release. What Trump did was just amplify the sensible Obama policy.
Why is it not more often? I know I have mentioned it on my show, but why doesn't every Republican say, excuse me, this was done under the previous administration as well?
We do. Some of them did, but really what needs to be said is this is the reason to build a wall. And I think the Trump administration needs to establish military bases at the crossing points that are most common, use eminent domain to seize the property and compensate the owners, put military bases at the choke points along the border, and then if Congress won't go along with building a wall, declare it military necessity and start connecting those military bases with walls until it's...
What do you think of a public funding of the wall? I think they'd raise the money I think they'd raise it in a week.
Yeah, you do a crowdsourcing and you can get your name on a brick or on a section of the wall, and then your grandchildren can come visit and maybe do a rubbing on the wall. This is the part of the wall that my grandpa paid for to save America. It'll be like the Vietnam Memorial.
All right, so you're in favor of a crowdsourcing?
I'm in favor of whatever it takes, and if Congress can't get it done, and you know what? If we lose the midterm elections, which we very well might, the polls are running in favor of the Democrats. They're now 8 up on a generic Democrat-Republican poll. If we lose the midterm elections, the Trump administration is over because the rest of his administration will be a Stalinist show trial, fake impeachment. So I just want to encourage your listeners, get involved with your local Republican congressional candidate. He needs your help. If we lose the Congress, it's over.
All right. Let's see here. Gary in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You're on with John Zmirak and Dennis Prager.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. Enjoy the show. Hey, couple things. I work in the church, in the Catholic Church, and it's refreshing to hear what your guest is saying. It's exactly what I've experienced in the 5 years I've been involved. And sometimes I felt like the Lone Ranger in my thoughts and expressing those views. But it's good to have them confirmed because once in a while you feel like maybe I'm wrong, but it's good to hear someone else say it.
What is the it that you're happy to hear said?
The issue about the immigration and filling the pews and the bishops. I'm very strong about the abortion issue and what he had mentioned about the bishops not as loud about abortion as they are as immigration.
Well, yeah. Thank you for calling. I had not realized the self-interest involved in all of these cases, as you have pointed out. I think more ideologically, not idealistically, ideologically, and that's very powerful, John. What you have said.
It's not being cynical. It's not being cynical.
No, it isn't at all.
I believe in original sin with St. Augustine, and I know original sin is operative. And when people give idealistic reasons for their actions, it makes sense to look behind the surface and see if it's also lying in their pocketbook.
That's right. That's exactly correct. Let's see here. Yes, you have another very important point that I don't understand why it isn't said every day by the president and the Republicans, and that's E-Verify.
Yeah, most Americans think that employers have to check to see if a worker is legal. They don't. E-Verify, the federal system for checking, is completely voluntary, and the Democrats insist on that.
Why don't the Republicans make it required?
Because the chief labor lobby doesn't want it. The Koch brothers don't want it. The National Restaurant Association don't want it. They want to keep using illegal labor.
All right, there you go, folks. So he's an equal opportunity self-interest detector, John Zmirak. All right, Because you know why? Because, and I don't know the man, he cares about truth. His book is The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. I'm Dennis Prager.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
You know what I'm really worried about is white males in this country. Those are the people committing the most
Me. So you're worried about me?
Yes.
If I said I'm worried about black males, that would be a racist thing, right? You just said white males. That's pretty racist.
They have to shoot it.
Love, not hate, makes America great.
Look at some of the Nazi propaganda about the Jews, and you see a lot of stuff that's really similar to what people are saying about Latino Syrians.
I wouldn't equate what's going on today with the rise of the Third Reich. Would you?
What did you just say? You don't think it is part of the Third Reich?
No, I would not equate Donald Trump with the rise of the Third Reich.
I do believe we're a white supremacist country.
If we're such a racist country, why is it that Asian Americans and Indian Americans are actually richer than white Americans on average? Didn't Obama separate 90,000 kids from their parents?
I don't know. What is your source on it?
Does that make this right? Department of Homeland Security. In fact, Bernie Sanders put on his website in 2015, "Dear Obama, stop separating parents from their
I have to read up on that.
Well, all the images they're using on television of children in cages, those were taken under Obama. I mean, Obama separated 90,000 kids and there were no protests.
Okay, so now we're interviewing you.
Well, no, I'm just saying a sentence.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You protested under Obama, right? There were no protests like this. Why?
It wasn't no hate speak. There
mean?
was no hate speak behind what he did. I mean, there was no. It didn't come with all that evil, hateful rhetoric.
Like what? Give me an example. Think illegals should be deported, or
illegal?
Like illegal immigrants.
What's
illegals.
illegal? What's illegal?
Someone who's not here legally. Like someone who broke federal immigration law to come into the country.
Well, maybe there's a reason. You know?
So there's a reason that it's okay to break laws at times. So if I'm hungry, I can rob a store, essentially, because that's a reason.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
We have to do a better job of convincing the other side how wrong the policies are of the left. They've destroyed the family, destroyed jobs with things like minimum wages. We need to make the better argument. The fact that the majority of people, including the majority of Republicans, Michael, believe in a minimum wage blows my mind. We can't even convince Republicans how stupid that is. How are we going to convince Democrats? We need to make better arguments because I don't believe people are stupid, Michael. I believe that the captain on the Titanic, had he known about the iceberg, would have taken evasive action. We need to take evasive action, and we need to make better arguments to our friends on the left. I gave a speech once, and often when I give a speech, the audience is predominantly white, even though there's no
Prager University. Go to prageruniversity.com and donate today. All right, everybody, final segment with John Zmirak. I've held him on for an hour because he's so interesting and clear as a bell, and you know how much I love clarity. He's senior editor of thestream.org. But he's on because of his book, just published, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. And I'll tell you, it's very upsetting. It's like it's the future of the United States versus the unions, versus the Democratic Party, versus the big business, versus a big chunk of the Republican Party leadership, versus the Catholic Church. It's like, who's out there caring about America's future, John?
Yeah, it really is David and Goliath. And the Goliath is the immigration lobby. Well, you got President Trump. You got people like Steve King. You got people like Dave Bratt. People like Steve Bannon, a man I respect very much, who I wish were still in the White House. And
you. And I hope me. And I mean, but yeah. The thing is, tens of millions of Americans, but we don't have institutional representation.
That's right, we don't. The closest thing is the Freedom Caucus in the House. And good groups like Act for America and the Federation for American Immigration Reform and the Center for Immigration Studies and Numbers USA. There are a lot of people out there doing the research, turning up the numbers. We need leaders in Congress who are willing to speak up. Ted Cruz is one of them, and it's really important we reelect him in the Senate here in my state of Texas.
There's a
But those House races are crucial.
There's a call from San Antonio. I'm just not putting them on because of the time factor. Alicia in San Antonio, was the money Barack Obama gave to the Catholic Church used to bring illegals into the country? Any comments?
Well, I'll tell you that the Catholic Church makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year from federal contracts taking care of immigrants. 97 cents of every dollar spent by the U.S. Catholic bishops on refugees, 97 cents of that was a taxpayer dollar. If it weren't for federal contracts, places like Catholic Charities and Catholic Relief Services would have to close their doors. They're essentially not charities anymore. They're just federal contractors. And so, of course, they want more business. If we close the border, they won't have as much business. It's like Baskin-Robbins trying to sell Rocky Road. That's it.
The book is The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. I hope we meet one day, John Zmirak.
Thank you. That would be great. God bless.
Yep. Wow. A lot of cold water this past hour. It's important. Got to fight, my friends. Thank you for listening. This is the Dennis Prager Show.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.